Okay, let's dive right into this explainer and learn how to diagnose plant problems like a forensic detective arriving at a crime scene. You know the feeling, right? You walk out into your garden or you check on a prized houseplant only to find drooping leaves, weird spots, or just totally bizarre growth. It's incredibly frustrating. But before you panic, reach for a chemical spray, or just give up and toss the plant in the compost, you need to stop and investigate. Today we're going to figure out how to actually read the visual and behavioral signals your plants are sending you. By the end of this explainer, you're going to have a systematic scientific framework to identify what is truly going wrong. And a massive heads up, we'll be focusing heavily on the physical and cultural environment today because honestly, that is almost always where the real culprit is hiding.
So here is our detective's notebook for today. We're going to follow this exact step-by-step progression. First, establishing the normal baseline. Second, investigating those cultural and physical suspects. Third, decoding the plant's symptoms. Fourth, spotting the telltale signs. And finally, developing your rock-solid hypothesis.
Step 1. The normal baseline. Seriously, you cannot spot a deviation if you have no idea what normal actually looks like.
The absolute first rule of any investigation is knowing what a healthy victim, your plant in this case, is supposed to look like. By sticking to these foundational steps, we avoid some of the most common, totally preventable amateur mistakes out there. For instance, some plants like variegated thyme or certain hostas just naturally produce leaves that are yellow or light green. To the untrained eye, that looks like a severe nutrient deficiency or maybe a nasty viral infection, but it's not. It's a completely stable, healthy genetic expression. So step 1 is always identifying the specific host plant. Step 2 is describing the problem with actual anatomical precision. Is it hitting the old leaves or the new growth? And step 3, which is really the cornerstone of our entire explainer today, is ruling out those non-living environmental factors.
Moving right along to step 2, cultural and physical suspects. We really need to evaluate the physical environment here because we must always rule out the usual non-criminal suspects first.
There is a hard line between the living and the non-living. Abiotic or cultural factors are your non-living stressors. We're talking drought, overwatering, terrible soil drainage, a sudden frost, or maybe chemical injury from an herbicide drift. The absolute dead giveaway for a cultural issue is the pattern. The distribution of the damage is typically very uniform and very sudden. If an entire row of shrubs suddenly turns brown after a severe freeze, you are looking at an abiotic, physical issue. Biotic factors, on the flip side, are your living invaders, the fungi, bacteria, viruses, and insects. These guys take time to develop. They spread from plant to plant, usually clustering in certain areas. Ensuring your plant isn't simply suffering from abiotic stress, like a lack of water or a poor physical environment, is absolutely critical. In fact, optimizing cultural care can drastically reduce secondary pathogen problems simply because a healthy plant can fight off an infection way better than a stressed one.
Step 3. Decoding plant symptoms. Once we've thoroughly vetted the cultural and physical environment, it's time to gather evidence by looking closely at the plant's distress signals.
The most crucial takeaway here is that a symptom is merely the plant's reaction to stress. It is not the actual perpetrator. Think of it exactly like a human having a fever. The fever tells you something is definitely wrong, but it doesn't tell you if it's a cold, the flu, or some other infection. In plants, symptoms include things like wilting, dropping leaves, or stunted growth. And remember, these symptoms can absolutely be caused by those cultural issues we just discussed or by a living pest.
Let's look at the sheer difference between an abnormal symptom and a perfectly healthy state. Take these yellowing chlorotic strawberry leaves, for instance. Chlorosis is just a yellowing of normally green tissue because the plant is lacking chlorophyll. Now sure, this could be a disease, but very often chlorosis is a cultural symptom. It's caused by poor nutrition, overwatering, or extreme soil pH locking up iron. Compare that to a highly textured, puckered green leaf. That deep texture is called rugosity. While rugosity can be a symptom of a virus or herbicide damage in some species, for certain host plants, it is 100% normal. Again, this points right back to knowing your baseline.
Now check out this massive abnormal swelling on a tree trunk. This is called a gall, and it's a structural symptom. It looks super dramatic, almost like a tumor growing right out of the wood. A gall is basically the plant's localized response to an irritant. What's so fascinating from a diagnostic perspective is that this specific symptom could be the plant's response to a fungus, a bacteria, or even a tiny insect that laid its eggs inside the tissue. The symptom tells us there is a response, there is a fight happening, but it still doesn't give us the true identity of our suspect.
If you have successfully ruled out your cultural and physical suspects, meaning you know your watering, your soil, and the weather are all optimal, and you suspect abiotic infection, examining the specific type of tissue damage can quickly narrow down your list. If you see spots in the leaves that are dry, colorful, and have really clearly defined borders, you're likely looking at a fungal issue. But if those spots are slimy, smell awful, look water-soaked, and have absolutely no defined border, you are almost certainly dealing with bacteria. Viruses, well, they tend to cause crazy systemic colors, like weird mosaics of light and dark green, along with heavily distorted, twisted growth.
Step 4. Spotting the telltale signs. This is where we transition from looking at the plant's reaction to hunting for the actual culprit itself. We are moving from symptoms to signs.
A sign is literally the smoking gun of your investigation. While a symptom was just the plant's reaction, a sign is the physical evidence of the organism itself. It provides conclusive, undeniable proof of what's causing the damage. Finding a sign takes your investigation from a really good hunch to a locked-in, confirmed diagnosis.
For example, spotting this white, fluffy mycelia clinging right to the plant stem is a definitive sign of fungal activity, specifically something like white mold. If you see this, you don't have to guess if the plant is simply wilting from a lack of water anymore. You have visual confirmation of a living fungal pathogen actively feeding on your plant's tissues.
When it comes to insect pests, the signs of their activity can range drastically in scale. You might be dealing with a nearly microscopic, translucent larva that bores deep inside the plant tissue. You'd probably only see the symptom, like a wilting stem, until you actually cut the plant open and find the tiny sign inside. Or it could be a completely different story, like a massive, vividly striped caterpillar just brazenly grazing on dill in broad daylight. In both of these cases, the physical presence of the insect itself is the absolute sign you need to make your diagnosis.
But what if the culprit pulled a hit and run? Insects are notoriously mobile. They might cause severe damage and then just fly away before you even walk out into the yard. Fortunately, even in the absence of a live bug, they often leave behind forensic signs. Just look at this molted insect skin left behind on a heavily chewed leaf. Finding molted skins, egg cases, protective webbing, or even insect frass, that's bug poop, right at the scene of the crime is all the conclusive evidence you need.
Step 5. Developing your hypothesis. Finally, we have to pull all of this amazing evidence together. Our baseline knowledge, our cultural and physical environment checks, our symptoms, and our signs to build a watertight scientific case.
By cross-referencing the symptoms you've decoded against the physical signs you've spotted, you can effectively and systematically rule out the wrong causes to pinpoint the exact issue. For instance, if your plant has blight, a rapid death of foliage, it could be fungal, bacterial, or maybe a harsh environmental condition like a sudden freeze. If you see chlorosis, those yellowing leaves, remember our heavy cultural focus today. It is highly likely to be poor nutrition or overwatering long before it's an insect. And wilt? The single most common cause is a physical abiotic factor, drought. But if the soil is soaking wet and the plant is still wilting, you cross-reference that to suspect root rot, which destroys the root's ability to take up water. You let the symptoms guide you, and you use the signs in your environmental knowledge to lock in the answer. Don't guess. Take the time to work the process.
Plant diagnosis requires real patience, sharp observation, and a solid understanding of the physical environment. The next time a plant in your care struggles, don't just reach for a random quick fix treatment. Take your time, evaluate the soil and the weather first, and ask yourself, what forensic clues is this plant desperately waiting for me to find? Are you ready to become a true garden detective?